Hello and happy Thanksgiving. It's so wonderful to be able to gather with you today in this way. So today's video, as you notice, I'm back outside because I thought this would be a good way for us to celebrate Thanksgiving. I tried my best to find a place out of the wind, but you can see by my hair that that's coming or going. So I wanted to think about how we keep Thanksgiving in this particular time, in this time of pandemic, in this COVID times, as people call them, when it seems maybe a bit more difficult to be thankful. When people have been going through very difficult times, some folk can't gather with their families in the way they want to, can't see their friends face to face, only by camera like this. So I thought, how could we talk about Thanksgiving? And even after 30 years of ordained ministry, the Holy Spirit amazes me continually. So as I was sitting this week and thinking, in my head, I could hear that hymn, "Now thank we all our God, with hearts and hands and voices, who wondrous things hath done, in whom this world rejoices." But I wasn't hearing it in my head the way we often sing it at church, with an organ and with all kinds of oomph. In my head, as I heard it very quietly, very meditatively, very softly, and as a kind of reflection. I thought I would really like to have that for this video. But then I thought, I can't sing, as all of you know, and I don't play. So I sent off a text to our wonderful, wonderful, gracious giving Bishop John. And I said to him, that I would love to have this hymn, just him singing softly with his guitar. And could he do that for me? And he said he would try. And a couple hours later, he sent this amazing video, which I'm going to play for you in a few moments, because it sounded like it sounded in my head. This sort of vision I had, of what this hymn would sound like. That's the way it sounded when he sent me the video, and I was amazed. Now, if that wasn't enough sort of movement of the Holy Spirit, the next morning when I was on Facebook, someone had shared a bit of information about this hymn. I knew nothing about this hymn other than that we sing it on Thanksgiving. But this hymn writer, Martin Rinkhart, this hymn was written in the 1600s. And the reflection about the hymn told us that he was a Lutheran pastor in a walled city during the 30 Years' War. And not only were they within that city during the 30 Years' War, during that time there was also a plague. A plague had hit the city and many people had died, and the plague was then followed by famine. And this hymn writer ended up being the only pastor who was left alive in the city. So some weeks he would be doing as many as 30 to 40 funerals a week. One year he recorded 5,000 funerals, including that of his own beloved wife. And yet, in the midst of going through a war, a plague, and a famine, this man was able to turn his heart and his words to giving thanks. And this hymn he originally wrote as a thanksgiving to do before a meal. You sort of think about how he could have written about this bounteous God who all our lives is near us. How he could have written, and I'm sure this is true for him, who guides us when perplexed and frees us from all ills in this world and the next. So this hymn writer wasn't writing a hymn of thanks when times were good and it was easy to give thanks. He was writing a hymn of thanks in the midst of his own pandemic, in the midst of a plague and a war and a famine, in the midst of his own pain and loss. So I want you to think about that as you listen to Bishop John sing the hymn, Now Thank We All Our God.
Now thank we all our God, with hearts and hands and voices, who wondrous things has done, and whom his world rejoices, who from our mother's arms has blessed us on our way with countless gifts of love, and still is ours today. Oh, may this bounteous God through all life be near us, with ever joyful hearts and blessed peace to cheer us, and keep us in his grace, and guide us from windward blade, and free us from all ill, and this world and the next. All praise and thanks to God, the Father now be given, of the Son and him who reigns with him in highest heaven, the one eternal God, who earth and heaven adore, for thus it was, is now, and shall be evermore.
Now, wasn't that simply amazing and so powerful? Call for us to remember to give thanks. Because that's the thing, giving thanks, having a spirit of gratitude, isn't really about what's happening in our lives at any one time. It's about our perception of it. Being thankful is a choice that we make. It's a choice to believe that God is with us, no matter what is going on. A choice to believe that God has sent us joy around us if we only go and look. It is a choice to believe in the power and perseverance of God to see us through all things. It's a choice to even look at some of our sorrow with thankful hearts. Because you sort of think about it, those of us who may not be able to be with our family and friends this Thanksgiving and feel lonely and a little bit lost, but that loneliness is really rooted in having amazing friends and being loved and having love to give. It's really a way of being thankful. Being thankful to have things to miss. It's a different way of looking at it, but I think it's a choice that we make. It's a choice to see every moment of every day as a moment of gratitude. To remember that we are God's creatures and we are here to do God's will. We are here to be all that God has created us to be fully human and fully alive, to flourish, even in the difficult times, to flourish and to have life and to have joy and to give praise to God. And we give praise to God when we have thankful, grateful hearts, when we are able to see even just one thing. It is a great practice at the end of every day to find something. It could be an ordinary thing. It could be, thank you that I can feel all those aches and pains. Thank you that I'm forgetful, because it reminds me I've got lots to remember and lots to forget. And I wouldn't forget if I didn't have so many other things in my head. That's sort of one I'm going to use a lot these days, I think. But every day are things to be grateful for. And one of the sort of theologian poets, I would call her, I guess, that helps me to remember that is Mary Oliver. And if you've never discovered any Mary Oliver poetry, I really encourage you to Google it or order a book of her poetry, because she is quite amazing. And so I want to share with you sort of as a prayer, as a reflection, and as our reading, I guess, for this Holy Thanksgiving Day, this poem by Mary Oliver called Messenger. My work is loving the world. Here the sunflowers, there the hummingbird, equal seekers of sweetness. Here the quickening yeast, there the blue plums. Here the clam deep in the speckled sand. Are my boots old? Is my coat torn? Am I no longer young and still not half perfect? Let me keep my mind on what matters, which is my work, which is mostly standing still and learning to be astonished. The phoebe, the delphinium, the sheep in the pasture, and the pasture, which is mostly rejoicing, since all the ingredients are here, which is gratitude, to be given a mind and a heart and these body clothes, a mouth with which to give shouts of joy to the moth and to the wren, to the sleepy dug-up clam, telling them all over and over how it is that we live forever. Let us give thanks to God. Let us remember that our work is loving this world that God has made. It is being astounded by its beauty and astounded by ourselves whom God has made, and to be giving praise and thanksgiving to this wondrous God. Happy Thanksgiving.
Now thank we all our God, with hearts and hands and voices, who wondrous things has done, and whom his world rejoices, who from our mother's arms has blessed us on our way with countless gifts of love, and still is ours today. Oh, may this bounteous God through all life near us, with ever joyful hearts and blessed is to cheer us and keep us in His grace and guide us when perplexed and free us from all ill and this world and the next. All praise and thanks to God, the Father now be given, of the Son in Him who reigns with Him in highest heaven, the one eternal God, who earth and heaven adore. For thus it was